and that first half was not respectable whatsoever. To the point to where I think Inter Miami has to be very appreciative and thankful to PSG and Luis Enrique in that they took players off the field, took a different approach in the second half. And that same preview, I told you that this match was up to PSG and whatever PSG wanted to do with it. They were up for nothing. And if they had gone on and pushed it in the second half, it would have gotten out of control. What I don't appreciate, and this is the part that drives me crazy, having been a player in Major League Soccer for a number of years, it drives me insane. When the narrative is the pride that Inter Miami showed in the second half, the competitive spirit, this had nothing to do with Inter Miami. It had to do with PSG deciding that, you know what, we're thinking about the quarterfinals. This game is already done. We know it's done. They know it's done. And so we're going to make this into a glorified training session. So to then sort of put out the messaging that, you know what, Inter Miami really made us proud in that second half, that is as close to nonsense as you can get.
And also, MLS can learn from this. They can build from what they've seen in this tournament. What are they going to learn?
Well, to spend more.
That's where you're at. But we could have said that before this tournament. We could have said that 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, these moral
this
victories.
Doesn't change anything,
these moral victories are getting old for Major League. Did he really tell you to shut up?
Pardon? Of course.
Yeah. Look, these moral victories are getting old for Major League Soccer.
Do you really believe that?
What I will say here is. I think it was asking too much of Inter Miami.
Right, I don't.
No, just let me hear me out. Hear me out, Dan.
Analysis. Oh, it's too much.
It's not the analysis.
It's just like,
what did you?
Why bother?
What did
What's
you
the
expect?
point?
You've got 4 players who are your prime players that are nearing 40 years of age. Okay, you've got a salary cap of 5.9 million. And you're right. You do this to yourself. Nobody asked you to put down a salary cap. Nobody asked you to have these stupid MLS mechanisms, these restrictions, and yet you go out there against the best team in the world. And to Ali's point, they let their foot off the gas. They could have really, really embarrassed this team. So much so that Messi himself, after the game, feels compelled to speak up about how proud he is of the effort, even though they're playing on a totally different level, a totally different league. They should never be anywhere near PSG. But that's where Major League Soccer is today, and they do it to themselves. Can they find ways to grow? Yes. Can they learn from this? Yes.
No,
but not.
No.
Yes, to spend.
But they're not going to.
Maybe this type of moral victory makes them realize, hey, in the group phase, we were able to do enough, but if we really want to take this to the next level,
in the group stage, you're up against teams that weren't caring as much when it came to
No, it's not caring as much. Look, you're up against a Portuguese giant, an African giant, you're up against a Brazilian giant, and you did very well. But when you're up against a legit team, a tournament favorite, you're not even in the same battlefield. That's the lesson here.
But then how do you explain everybody else's performances from MLS as well?
Well, that's different.
It's not an anomaly, is it? Inter Miami made it to the round of 16, and that is being saluted as something that they should be proud of. As Ali said, brave.
I'm not going to sit here and try to defend Major League Soccer, but Seattle was in a very complicated group, and LAFC got here in a playoff and didn't have a home game to begin with.
The thing is, none of this is a surprise.
No.
None of this is a surprise.
But why should it be a surprise?
No, exactly. So that's fine. MLS is there. Champions League is there or whatever, and that's where it is. That's where everybody lives. So I don't know why we need to bring everything together in this world.
Well, what do you mean why?
Why do we have to compare apples and oranges?
You wouldn't have said that with the Brazilian teams. Look at the Brazilian teams right now, the rest of Europe.
Brazilian teams just beat Inter.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But Inter
you have Alexis McAllister right now saying that the South American teams can't compete, and here they are competing.
I don't care what they're saying, Herc. And what I'm saying is that this is a glorified Champions League contest now.
No, I don't believe so.
What do you mean, no? Why?
No, because it's not a Champions League contest.
What? No. Right, who's left?
Who's left?
6 Champions League sides
and 2 Brazilians.
And 2 Brazilians, yes. So
where are we at?
So
why can't the Brazilians, why can't South America say, hey, we can compete as well?
Because they can't.
When the majority of European teams are littered with South Americans.
Because they can't compete.
They are competing.
They are in top gear.
No, but Dan, no. Dan, you cannot say that.
No, what I'm saying, Mario, is these Brazilian teams are in top gear, trying their absolute best, putting in 100% every single time. You cannot say the same about these European sides. So already it's a different level. And Brazilian teams have been fantastic and they've exceeded all expectations. But are we really going to expect a Brazilian side to go on and win this? Are we expecting a Brazilian side to make it through to the final?
Brazilian teams have already won the Club World Cup.
But
multiple times.
But you want to play against each other too?
Okay, but
I understand that. But football is not based on that.
Why do you want to take away the right for them to compete?
No.
I'm not taking the right away. I'm just saying that this is where this tournament falls short. that we're going to end up with 6 UEFA sides in the knockout stages with 2 Brazilian sides, and that is why it's difficult to get excited about it, because we already have a Champions League.
So if you have more European teams in the knockout rounds than South American in the World Cup, you want to duet the World Cup as well?
I don't know what that means.
Well, because you're saying if the best football is played in Europe, then it should just be the Euros, not the World Cup. That's what you're saying right now with the Champions League.
Isn't what I'm saying at all, because the best players in the world play in Europe, and that's fine. That's not an argument. That is what's happening. So it can be no surprise that European teams are dominating this competition.
Well, why would it be a surprise for you? That's what I don't understand. You still can compete. If a European team wins this tournament, that's not going to be a massive surprise.
So why have it?
What do you mean?
Why go through all this faff?
What do you mean, why go through all this stuff?
Ali, help them, man, because this is crazy. Guys, listen, football is very simple. Sometimes you have to compete with the ones that are either better than you, so you understand your level where you are. I understand what you say, Dan, that we can call that and say, like, okay, the tournament this, or this one's is better part, or that one is a better part. It doesn't matter. When you are a young boy, and you develop your skill, you also want to compete with everybody. When you get older, you want to do the same. So I went to, for example, play in Mexico. It's a totally different league, but it doesn't matter, because what the key factor is, your development comes from competing with people that are playing a different type of football that you are used to, and that makes you a better player. I understand that some teams, like sometimes you might say in advance that they might not, they compete with them and you might not succeed or get to a certain level because you know that they are facing a team that are better than them. But how are you going to become better if you never face against a team that is great? And that's what happened to Miami. They have great players. Okay, we can talk about, arguably one of the best players in the world, you understand, and he's at a certain age. But still, or a Suarez or anybody. But what the key factor is in this game, you still have to compete to see where your level is. Because watching on TV or playing computer games is not the same while you're putting your sweat out there and compete against them. And now I know what level I am, so now I can make a choice, including for the ones that did it. Okay, for a Messi and all them, it's not important because they already did that. But I'm talking about the ones, the American young boys that are here now. Now they know the level where they are, and now they know what they need to be done in their career to get to the level where they want to go.
I played for a national team for nearly a decade, in which most of the games we played were against superior opposition. And you can argue that a lot of those times we perhaps did not belong on the same field with teams like old school Brazil, old school Argentina. But man, we competed. And we gave everything we had, and I can guarantee you, I cannot speak about everybody else, but Herculez was my teammate. He would know that when it came to competition, I was there every single day. So I'm all for competition. Even if I knew that we could bring our best game and still wasn't enough to beat Brazil or to beat Argentina, but I was willing to compete. My argument and my point about Inter Miami is that they were not even competing in the first half. It wasn't even competitive. Mm-hmm. They were not getting close to PSG. They were not completing passes. They were not passing the ball out of pressure. They were staying off of PSG, and it's like, man, we're not even going to get tight enough to PSG. Maybe we can't do it, or we just don't want to do it, because if we do that, we're going to get exposed. They played with a certain amount of fear in that first half. Those are the things that I'm talking about. I want MLS teams to have the chance to compete against teams like PSG for the points that Mario was just making. You need to know. You need to know where you are and how much more do you need to grow in order to get to that point. But let's not, and again, that's a continuation of the second point I was making earlier, let's not diminish what that gap is by saying, let's be proud of what this team did in the second half. Mm-hmm. This game was not decided at any point by Inter Miami. Everything about this game was decided by PSG. I suppose it's something that we expected, but I expected Inter Miami to at the very least compete. And in the first half, they did not do that.
You're an elitist. You're an elitist.
Why?
You're going against FIFA's own mission statement.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry for going against FIFA. Dear me,
Is your problem with this tournament? Is your problem with the tournament that there's so many other tournaments that already exist? Why have this? Because if that's the argument, I would say get rid of the Nations League. Get rid of all these tournaments that don't mean anything. Don't do a Gold Cup every 2 years. There's so many different things we could do here, Dan.
Absolutely on board.
This makes sense.
I've been absolutely on board for this tournament, and I want it to do well.
Okay.
Because it's a great idea.
Yeah.
There have been so many reasons, though, which have kind of been an argument against it. The half-empty stadiums, the poor pitches, the weather delays. Things like this just kind of snowball into a fan of the game kind of thinking,
I think that's more of a U.S. thing, a North American thing, than it is a tournament thing. I really do, because nowhere else around the world will you have these weather delays. That's a very North American thing. Nowhere else around the world will you see grass fields laid over turf. That's a very North American thing. So while I agree with what you are saying, there are different things you could do to make this a better tournament. I can't for the life of me find a reason to say this tournament has not been a success. I mean, you have two teams.
Herc, man.
You've
had over 1 million empty seats in the group
No, don't go with the
stages.
statistics that you see. Talk about what you've seen at the beaches in Miami. Talk about what you've seen while these Boca and River, those fans.
Brilliant.
And they're out of the group phase.
Absolutely.
The Egyptian fans, the Japanese fans.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
There's so many good things to talk about.
Now we're at the nitty-gritty stages. What makes you want to watch this Club World Cup now? What makes you want to see?
Yes, the elite.
PSG against Bayern again.
What makes me want to see that? I want to see if these Brazilian teams can still make a run. And when they do get there, I want to see what this is like. I want to see what Real Madrid under Xabi Alonso is going to be. I want to see. This is what you got to stop thinking about this as a preseason. You got to stop thinking about it that way.
The issue that I have, as great as it's been, I think now we're at a stage where you kind of like you've got these teams competing. But for the Europeans, it doesn't really matter.
That's what you say. I see Bayern Munich, and I think it matters. I hear what Harry Kane says.
Here's the problem.
He thinks it matters.
Here's the problem. This whole tournament, a lot of it has been made for the Europeans. That's why we're kicking off at stupid times. No one's watching in Europe.
That's the World Cup as well.
No one's watching it.
That's every major tournament that are going to cater to a major market.
Yes, but people watch the World Cup. People aren't watching this.
Yeah, so when you blame the empty stadiums in North America, well, I can't believe that people don't show up at noon on a Wednesday. Why would that be?
But you're zigzagging here. You're saying to me that you care about PSG against Bayern. PSG against Bayern fans don't care against PSG Bayern. That's the problem.
Well,
that's the issue.
Well, that's a perception problem.
Well, it's not perception. It's a. Yes. If I could ring 100 people in England right now and say, "Have you been watching the
That's a
Club World Cup?"
perception problem because back there they think this doesn't matter. They think that there's empty seats all the time. And then when you speak to people here who are in those cities, you're like,
right,
what's going on?
No, but here's. Look, we could go around in circles. Chelsea in a pre-season sells out every single stadium. Chelsea in the Club World Cup doesn't.
Well, I don't know about that.